Thanks everyone for coming along. So this is day 3, so my mind is head spinning. But what I thought I'd do is just show you some of my previous work and talk a little bit about that, and then talk about my project here that I have for my residency here, and also the program I'm running within that for craft cubes. So basically tonight I think will be all about blankets and my using blankets in my art practice. So more recently, probably about for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been looking at the shared visual language of sort of bodily fragments in medical imagery and also religious iconography, particularly Christian iconography and Catholic iconography. I'm really interested in how science and religion sort of operate as social forces that sort of continue to place women's bodies in particular, and sort of behaviour and experiences. And I'm also really interested in how sort of both, I suppose, both science and Catholicism are like quite invested in sort of the material stuff. And also they're both, I guess, ways that humans approach the world and look at both religion and science, so ways of sort of figuring out who we are, why do we do what we do, where do we come from, all of those sorts of big questions, very different groups around it. And I'm sort of, I suppose I'm trying to sort of gently unpick a lot of the sort of threads and the difficult threads of some sort of religious thought quite often. Having said that, at the same time, like I've found that science or medicine isn't some neutral, objective field. It's always influenced by culture. So I find some really interesting things through that way in my research. And when I was starting to look at religion and science, that's when I really started to look at blankets at the same time, and looking at blankets as both like a very functional domestic object, but also as a sort of symbolic object, whether that's like an emotional sort of object or a protective object, sort of a family heirloom, and also something that's very well used, domestic textile, so it gets marked and stained, and damaged and repaired, and really sort of colours that really sort of shows all the traces of the body and its use. So I've been thinking about sort of blankets and sort of domestic textiles really as almost as relics of people's lives and experiences. This particular work is called Lupa, that was made while I was on a residency in Rome, and it's using a blanket from my grandparents' house. And then there's actually a stain in the middle which is from an old quilt that I had when I was a teenager. And I think actually that particular stain was from a much loved ginger cat at the time. And funnily enough, about a year after I made this work, he died of old age. So I get very teary about this particular wee stain from this particular cat. Anyway. And I've also been really sort of interested in blankets, and so I've brought sort of the idea of blankets to my residency plans here. At the Tapestry Workshop, I'm sort of calling this month where I'll be here the Korea project. I've been quite interested in the very, the time and location specific patterns of particular blankets. And I believe, I haven't found it yet, I hope it's still standing, I believe there's an old Laconia blanket manufacturing building somewhere in sort of South Melbourne, South Bank, that I know they've been trying to really develop. And, so I'm kind of interested in that sort of, that history too of that manufacturing that we're losing. I think there's one place left in Australia that still manufactures woolen blankets, and everything else is gone. So these are kind of like relics of another time and place as well. And again, I think this is a matching blanket to the one in the other work, which I sort of unravelled and then a cast of a thigh bone. When I'm not doing a lot of textile, specifically textile work, I sort of delve a little bit into performance and installation work as well, essentially because I have a really bad back. So textiles is pretty much the worst thing I could do for it sometimes. So I'm also using this time in Melbourne to think about different ways that I could be working with textiles that perhaps so taxing on the body. But there's an interesting feedback that happens because I'm looking at woolen blankets, and sometimes there's woolen blankets as symbolic of sort of ill health or illness or sort of as a protective object. There's an interesting feedback that happens with just having sort of chronic health problems and how that feeds into your art practice, and it makes really interesting art and research, but that's not necessarily the best for yourself all the time. This project certainly was fantastic for my health. This was last year in Melbourne, actually. This was called Eat with Saints, and I was attempting to eat as much chocolate as I could in 2 hours, and it's actually casts of my own breasts, so I was just sitting there eating my body. But then at the same time, I had sort of lots of textile and domestic interventions around it. So I'm sort of at the moment, even though I'm doing some very slow sort of textile work with blankets, I'm thinking about ways I could use them in different creative approaches over the next month. And this was a project from last year where I walked as far as I could over 8 weeks while still doing my day job. And then and these were the shoes that I wore, and they then have little blanket inserts, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. I think I walked 246 kilometres in 8 days and went to work, and they were a $9 pair of shoes. So then
8 days or 8 weeks?
8 days.
8 days, yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of really sort of testing the body and like sort of looking at wear and tear on objects. So for the Laconia project here for my residency at the workshop, I've asked people to donate me blankets, and I'm sort of accepting up to 12. I've got 10, which is amazingly generous, and discovered that's way too much fabric to do anything with in a month, but that's okay. So I've asked for donations of blankets, and I'm usually very specific with the particular colours and patterns that I use in my own practice. At the moment, I'm really enjoying working with pinks and greens, as you can see here. But for this project, I've set myself the task of whatever I'm given, I will use it, which is a little bit different for me, but it's a good challenge. And this work was from, again, a couple of years ago. I believe it is a Laconia, it's a 1960s blanket, is those classic colours. And obviously, I just cut it out and then stitched the checker pattern back together so it spells no, which is obviously a statement about consent, but it's also about, I guess, the domestic burden, and particularly as a woman being socialised to be a pleaser all the time and to always say yes instead of no. So a big no there. So this particular work used one single blanket. So in an ideal world, at the end of 5 weeks, at the 4.5 weeks of the tapestry workshop, I'll have 10 blankets transformed into very different objects. But we'll see how we go and how far I get. It is going to be a good marathon. This is another example of, actually this is only half the blanket cut up into a strip, and then sort of bound up and embroidered. And quite often I cut things by hand without ruling them, and I kind of like the kind of slipped, sort of imperfect nature of things. And I have this work here if anyone wants to look at it. So this is the work that sort of inspired me to look at my project for Craft Cube, which I've called One Wound, One Repair. This is a blanket that I rescued from my grandmother's linen press when she was moving into a nursing home. She was moving because she had Alzheimer's and she was just needing help. I just couldn't live on her own anymore, and this was just one of the blankets. And I think this blanket was one of the, actually blankets is a thing in our practice. It's a really important material object to work with. So I started this particular work by cutting out a single hole in the blanket. I traced it from a coin. And then every hole after that, I cut out a hole, and I tried to remember how to cut the perfect circle, and sort of failed 1,000 times over because it's just hard to get that sort of perfect circle. But I was sort of thinking, I suppose, about cells dying, and then I was sort of putting the pieces back together into different positions on this idea of this patchwork and trying to find memories and finding things weren't quite back where I wanted them to. And it actually created a really beautiful effect. It's a very fragile piece now, but it's just, it's different, and I suppose that's what getting old might be a bit about. So I've been looking at using this process for my little craft cubes drop-in / workshop that I'm running this week. This is a detail of same work. I think the craft cube theme this year, I think it's their 10th year, and the theme was, the specific thing I had was crafting culture and the idea of sort of connecting people through time and geography and across generations. And in terms of thinking of connectivity, and I think because I've done a lot of work to do with sort of bodies and the burden of sort of being a body and having a body and how you navigate the world with that, I was thinking of blankets and cutting out some wound-like shoes, which is where the name One Wound, One Repair came from. So I started off, I have a small baby blanket that I can show people later. It's about big. So I started off this project by cutting a hole out of this blanket, and then the first person to come in, I asked them to repair that hole with whatever colour fabric and yarn that they chose to repair it. And once they made that repair, then they could cut their own hole and leave that for the next person to repair. So it's a kind of continual cyclical work of repairing something for someone else. So I guess I'm thinking about sort of connectivity between people, but also thinking about, again, I suppose, the domestic work of repairing, but also kind of the emotional burden of who has to fix things all the time. And I guess my practice has always been sort of really strongly feminist, so a lot of the time it's women who end up with that particular burden. I've also actually been really interested though in just seeing what people would do with the fabric and what colours they will choose, because it's very different to what I would do. And then people have been asking me questions about, well, do you want it here or do you want it there, or should I match it with this or not? So it's been a really nice process of seeing how people work. And every time someone makes a move on this particular work, it's going to change and develop. And I've just started today, and then it runs until Friday, and I've had some really fascinating conversations just today about people's lives and about their domestic lives and, you know, their mother's stories and their grandmother's stories. So yeah, it's been a really fascinating process so far, and you're welcome if we have time at the very end of the evening to come and have a look at that and join in. We'll come back tomorrow as well. How much time have we got? A little bit more. This work is not on blankets. This is on used nebuliners, fabric nebuliners. I thought I would put this in because I've embroidered this work with tiny plastic sheet from the 4-game squatter. And for my next sort of project, which I suppose in a sense is really come out of the thinking and research I've been doing for the Laconia project. The next project it's another endurance project, and it's an endurance program. An endurance performance and project about sort of landscape and climate change, and I suppose the uncomfortable thing of, well, whose land am I actually on? And I've been thinking about, I guess, the environmental and sort of social political impact even of sheep. This particular work was made in response to a brief that I was given for a gallery space in the Barossa Valley in South Australia, which is a really beautiful, fertile part of South Australia. Great food, wine, Maggie beer comes from the Barossa. Most people were like, oh, the Barossa, okay, Maggie beer. It's got a fantastic sort of German settler history. And this particular exhibition, the brief, was to sort of look at some of the German handicrafts and I guess the lives of the Lutheran settler women who came out and settled in the Barossa, and the kind of lives that they might have had and the craft practices that they maintained. And my German is terrible, and I can't even remember the name of the exhibition in German, but it was essentially the English translation was children, church and kitchen, because that was the focus. Thank you. I should remember it. And I learned German in primary school too. So. Anyway, so I went up to the Barossa to look at some of the local museums there, and I just found it interesting that there were some really amazing historical objects and records relating to the German women, but any kind of history of the Aboriginal people that used to live there just been completely erased, and probably for most of the German women who came and settled by the time they got to the Barossa, any kind of presence of another people living there probably just had gone as well. So I found that really interesting, and I think, so cleanliness is next to godliness. I believe might have been a John Wesley phrase, and I come from a Methodist background, so in a sense I'm implicating myself here, and I'm sort of very interested, obviously it's a reference also to Mary Kelly, but I was kind of very interested in, I suppose, the colonising power of cleanliness and white cloth and domestic interventions like gardens and domestic animals and sheep and all of those things that were sort of brought across to what we now call Australia. So yeah, I've done some embroidery with some little sheep, and my next project, using woolen blankets and sheep, I'm sort of going to be making a memorial of sorts to my grandmother's garden. She kept all of her plant tags for 20 or 30 years. So there's an amazing record of this garden that was situated in South Australia. But at the same time, this was a garden on somebody else's country, and she planted some terrible things, like there's lots of lantana tags, for instance, which is awful. So it is kind of a memorial to that family history, but also a questioning of that family history, because my father and I are then going to transport that work, which will be in the Tamworth Textile Triennial in 2020. We're going to transport that work to Tamworth following the Darling by bicycle.
Oh my God.
So just to actually sort of get out and see kind of some of that country, but I suppose it is a bit of a swan song of like, is anybody paying attention to the fact that the river is fucking dying? And perhaps there's a big link between sort of colonisation and the fact that the planet's going to pop because the land has been badly mismanaged. So that's where I'm at. And I only started cycling 8 weeks ago.
Wow.
So get into it. Yeah.